guys and welcome to another Schematics update. This time we want to talk about Project Hospital, and for that we have two special guests from Oxymoron Games. It's Jan and Ondra. Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay, sure. I'll go first. My name is Jan. I'm the lead programmer on Project Hospital. So basically I'm dealing with anything tech related, from the engine to animations, all the core gameplay mechanics, UI and so on and so forth.
And hi, my name is Ondra and I'm a senior game designer, and my work is actually to design and script interactions between characters and objects.
So you've worked in the industry for quite some time. Why the decision to go indie? What's so attractive about working in the indie scene instead of in AAA?
I guess it's the same for so many different developers. Be able to basically just try something on our own, and so like be able to see and work with all the different sides of game development, not just with like one specific role that you're assigned in a bigger team. But I guess at least for me, like all the different experiences I've had before, they've been all great, or at least really useful when it comes to, let's say, gaining experience and maybe some savings, which really helps now that we are independent.
For me, I actually worked on a couple of indie games already, and I must say the freedom that we as developers have without the corporate crown over our heads. So for example, designing and scripting is very much my own domain, and after some quick setups and meetings with the other guys, which is much quicker, I can implement things pretty much instantly, which is like awesome.
Yeah, it can be so much more efficient. I mean, it's a smaller team and so on. Yeah, on the other hand, I guess the responsibility, that's also something.
So I was wondering about your gaming background, meaning what games do you like to play in private?
Personally, I'm a PC gamer, and for me it's always been RPGs, strategy games, also like skill-based games. Let's mention, for example, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the early games in the series. That's basically what I grew up with. But I guess what I always loved the most was to just dig into editors and do something with the games on my own, whether it was creating maps for Heroes of Might and Magic. It was also a lot of fun playing with that and also learning at the same time. So I guess for me it was really natural to end up as a game developer.
For me it was a little bit of different, because I got my first computer when I was in college. So it was pretty much late. So I missed out on all the great games, but I was trying to play catch up ever since. So I pretty much play everything I can get my hands on. At the moment I'm actually doing my plays only on PS Vita, because right now I have a family and I do not have much time to play at home. Right now I'm really looking forward to Undertale, that actually came out recently, so that is on my to-do list right now.
We've got kind of what seems like a very simple question here, but for people who have no idea, what is Project Hospital?
May sound like a simple question. I'm not sure the answer is going to be simple. Generally, it's a strategy game in which you build hospitals, but we simulate a lot of different sites. Also worth mentioning, because of course we are being compared very often to Theme Hospital. The settings are more realistic, so patients come with real-world diseases and injuries, and then it's basically like a classical modern game in this genre. So you have the building side, you have the management side, and then you have a quite complex system where you can diagnose patients.
Talking about gameplay, what's the goal of Project Hospital, and is there some sort of end game?
For Project Hospital we plan to have two different modes. One is the sandbox mode, and then there's the campaign. So let me talk about the sandbox mode first. There's probably not the end game per se, because you can play it indefinitely, like making your hospital bigger, more efficient, unlock all the things there are to unlock. And for the campaign, we plan to have several levels, and the first couple of levels will actually serve as a tutorial that will teach you all those three pillars that Jan mentioned, like the building, managing, and diagnosing. From there on, there will be the levels that will test the skills that you have learned, and there will be some challenges and missions that you have to complete in order to proceed to the next level. And at this point, it has not been decided yet, but it should be overarched with some story, but that is still not decided.
Yeah, playing with quite a few different ideas what the story could be about and what would make sense when it comes to the game mechanics and what the different maps will be focusing on, whether it's building, managing, and so on and so on.
So we mentioned earlier that Project Hospital has a very realistic setting. So I'm curious, what inspired like the art design, like the look of Project Hospital?
In general, I guess the decision to go with something more realistic comes hand in hand with be able to go a bit more in depth. And the art style kind of, again, should match that. So while it's kind of simplified vector art, which of course makes sense. We are a very small team, so we can admit that basically how easily we can create the art is one of the deciding factors. But again, our characters should have more or less realistic proportions, and whatever allows us to create, let's say, more variations of objects or more variations in the character appearance, that's basically what we went for.
I wonder, what are the map sizes, and are there different locations, and how many floors can the hospital have?
As for the locations, there will be no locations as such. There will probably be just the blackness around the maps.
Yeah, I guess we'll probably try to create some like fictional areas for the different levels of the campaign, but I don't think that they'll vary too much, but they can vary in size and so on.
As for the map sizes, we have 3 right now, like the small, medium, and the big. And just to give you an example, the big one is like 96 by 96 tiles, which translates to meters, I guess. And as for the floors, it remains to be seen, because we first need to see how many rooms and how many departments will the game actually have in the end, and that will actually impact the floors.
So basically like your biggest hospital with all the floors should be just fine to fit everything in, even with like multiple versions of each room and so on.
But we are aiming for 4 to 5, if we can say some number, but it can change. Maybe it can be a little bit bigger or smaller, we'll see.
As you guys actually mentioned in your video, the trailer analysis, basically when it comes to performance for these games, of course the more stuff you have placed and the more characters you have, the bigger the impact, especially on CPU.
Yeah.
So having floors not only looks good, but for us it's also a really useful optimization, because you always have one floor active, so we need to process, let's say, animations only for characters on that floor. So I guess it's a really nice feature that is both, let's say, good looking and helps with performance.
Awesome. When we were looking at the trailer originally, we noticed immediately that there's a lot of stuff going on within the hospitals, which is fantastic. I'm curious, what level of depth and complexity are you aiming for in the gameplay?
Oh boy. Comparing to the trailer, which was based basically on our vertical slice build, there's still gonna be a lot more. Basically, we try to put in all the interesting systems, so basically like the building, diagnosis, which we've shown. We definitely want to have many more different departments with different equipment and so on. We are already working on hospitalizing patients. We'll have surgery, ambulances, so there's still a long way to go.
That sounds awesome. On your website, you talk a little bit about that you can focus on treating your patients, but also on the profit side. Can you elaborate on that? What are the options that we have?
It will come down to your choice on how you want to run your hospital. For example, if you want to keep your patients happy, it means that they will give you better star rating and the hospital will prosper. But it also means to putting an extra mile for your patients. For example, not putting them through all the required examinations or making the hospital look nice, because there will be some modifiers that will modify the patient's happiness.
We can go actually a bit more in depth. We track like 2 different values for the patients, like overall satisfaction and discomfort. Discomfort is mostly based on like what annoying symptoms the patients have, and then cure the symptoms that will improve. Also, some examinations are pretty annoying as well, so there will be some choices for the player. And then the general satisfaction is basically some of everything that's happening with the patient during his or her visit. So long waiting, dirty floor, anything like that. So a lot of options for the player to help their patients.
So I'm curious about diagnostics. You mentioned them as like puzzles. I'm curious about how do they work, and does it work like a mini game, or do the employees do it on their own if they're skilled enough?
Generally, each patient that comes to the hospital has a randomly selected diagnosis, but they only show certain symptoms. Then the player or the doctor run different examinations, whether it's in the doctor's office or lab tests and whatnot, or X-rays, or we also plan like MRI and other imaging machines. So you run all these to uncover the rest of the symptoms, and at the same time, you can see it in the patient's card. You have a list of possible diagnoses that update on the fly, and you can see basically percentage and see which diagnosis is the most probable one. If you choose your examinations correctly, you should end up with just one possible diagnosis and then move on to treatment. And basically, the doctors do the same, but it's affected by a few other things, especially the doctor's skill set. So if you hire a young doctor, they might not be able to solve everything, and then sometimes you will need to take over as the player and either solve the case yourself or assign the patient to a different, more experienced doctor and so on.
That all sounds very cool, but also very in-depth. Which leads me to the next question, that is, what group of player are you targeting? Is it more the casual or more the advanced player side who got experience with games in the genre?
For us, so the main goal is to balance it in a way that it will be actually very accessible for casual players, as the system themselves will be balanced in a way that player does not have to manage every little detail. So
but they can.
Yeah, but also they can. For example, let me give an example on the building mode. You can actually place and build the hospital piece by piece, but some players may not want to do that or will find that very hard. So there are prefabs that you can use and build a hospital pretty much quickly. And same goes for the other pillars as well. So it should be really accessible for the casual players. But also people who look for a more challenge, they can tweak every little detail, like for example the distance to the toilets or vending machines, so they can make the hospital really efficient, like nothing will too long or will be too far away for patients. And
basically everybody's probably trying this, so let's see how will we manage.
So do you plan on supporting any kind of mods?
Quick answer, yes. It's been part of the plans since the beginning, especially in the design of our data, so we keep basically everything open, whether it's textures, sounds, or most importantly the database with all the diagnosis departments and so on. So for example, it should be already quite easy to like add a new disease with matching examinations, treatments and so on to the game. And of course we are quite curious, as we've seen basically a big public outcry for a new theme hospital. I guess a mod with a bunch of crazy diseases and inflated heads is bound to happen at some time.
That's good news. So last question basically already. What's so compiling in this type of game for you personally?
For me personally is the sneaky addiction that the game actually managed to pull off. Like for example, I'm starting to build a wall, then a room, then I'm gonna fill the room, then I build the next one, and the hospital grows, and after a while I'm sitting there for 3 hours and trying to manage every little detail. And once I stop doing that, because we have to work on the game as well, I'm already in my head, I'm trying to imagine what it will look like if I move some rooms, make it more efficient, and that's for me.
Yeah, I guess it's really promising seeing people actually immerse themselves in the game, whether it's building or I guess most often they will just try to diagnose one more patient and so on. For me, it's also being able to create a game with such a big number of independently interacting systems and independent characters. It's actually already really fun when you've built like a department, sometimes just basically let it run and watch.
That makes sense. The final thing that we have on the sheet here is what is the future of Project Hospital, and now's your opportunity to tell people where they can find the game and all information about the game.
Well, the near future and the main goal is now to finish the game so we can give it to the people. At the moment they can find it on our Facebook page, Twitter and YouTube channel.
Yeah, and the website projecthospital.com.
After the release we already have a huge wish list that we would like to keep working on to extend the life of the hospital. And some
we have basically a lot of low priority tasks of our own that we'll be really happy to still be able to add in like probably free updates after release, but also on forums. We've been hearing a lot of feedback and feature requests from the forming community, so some of these will definitely make it on that list as well. And also probably we'll be able to create a few bits of DLC with like another specialized department and so on if the main game is successful. So hopefully it will get there.
Cool.
Awesome.
And that's about it for today. Thanks again, Jan and Ondra, for joining and talking with us about Project Hospital.
It's good to have you guys.
And to our listeners and viewers, thanks for listening and viewing. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, we have a wonderful comment section under the video. Feel free to use it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.